Hey guys, what's going on? It's Brian coming to you once again from the TST Industries Garage. In front of me, as I'm sure you can see, we have a very special product that we're bringing to you guys. This is the 2013 Plus Honda Grom frame slider kit. We're going to be installing it today on our 2017 model Honda Grom, showing you guys the process of how this goes together on that bike and protects your Honda Grom. Now, this is a product that we spent a lot of time developing. We had it in the development phase for quite a while because we wanted to make sure that we were hitting all of the points that people really wanted to see from a frame slider kit. These are going to be very, very strong components. We have our consumable Delrin components on the very ends. Those are going to be making the contact points. We have some larger brackets that should take a good bit of force, but if they really take a hard hit, they will bend out of the way. We actually even took the model of our whole frame slider kit. We threw it into a finite element analysis, which essentially just simulates forces in our 3D CAD modeling systems. And we actually went through some pretty complex mathematical calculations to figure out the forces that a Grom might experience in the event of a high side. We used those forces in our finite element analysis and ended up with this bracket width and these components that gave us the ultimate best results from what we were seeing in that element analysis. So here we have it, guys, the fully completed frame slider kit for the 2013 Plus Honda Grom. Now, I do want to touch on one thing. It is very uncommon at the moment to see it, but as we start to move forward, we have noticed that Honda did something that we weren't aware of at the time of making this kit. Now, on that right side crankcase, you have your oil filler typically towards the rear. However, Honda found a cheaper way to make that right side crankcase, and that was by moving that oil filler from the rear and the side up to the top of that crankcase where our bracket actually mounts to. So guys, I want you to be very, very sure that when you are purchasing this product, you check which crankcase you have. Make sure that for this one specifically, it is the rear/side fill. I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get to the bike a little bit more in depth so you guys really know. But please do make sure, because if you do have that top fill that we've seen come on a 2017, possibly a 2018, probably 2019s as they start to roll out is what they will come with. If you do have that, we are in development of a new right side bracket. It'll be a drop-down menu on our website. You could just select which one you have, and there you have it. You'll have a frame slider kit that fits. For right now, this kit is only going to fit on the Grom that has the side/rear filler for the oil. So guys, without any further ado, let's jump into this installation. It's going to be pretty straightforward. Couple bolts come out, couple bolts go back in, and there we have it, a protected Grom. Let's jump in. The very first step that we're going to do before we actually jump into anything on the bike is we're going to take our very long threaded rod. We're going to take a nylock nut on one end, a nylock nut on the other. Kind of an interesting step, but we do need to get one of these nylock nuts to actually overwhelm the torque of the other. So you'll see what I'm doing here in a second. Whichever one starts threading on, okay, so it is the one in my socket. So we're going to want to thread it on and get about 2 or 3 threads showing, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do after that. All right, so that's about 2 or 3. We're going to take the other one off, so this one on the end, by holding this one steady, if we can. Switch the ratchet. Kind of hold the rod, give it a tiny bit more torque, and there we have it. That second nylock should come off. Our first one should be in place on the rod, giving us about 3 or 4 threads showing. We're going to take our non-nylocking nut, actually thread that onto the rod, and bring that all the way down. A little bit of a hassle, but all the way down to that other nut. Now you could throw this on ahead of time and just keep it in the center, but not knowing which nylock nut is going to overwhelm the torque of the other does make that a little complicated. So with our nylock nut in place and our non-locking nut threaded up against it, we can actually go ahead and give those a little bit of counter torque at the moment. There we have it. So we've essentially just created a very long bolt. Now the next step is going to be involving the bike, so let's go ahead, jump on over to that. I'll move the table out of the way and start pulling parts as we need them. All right, guys, so our first step is going to be here on the right side crankcase of this Honda Grom. I do just want to one last time before we do jump into the installation, so possibly before you guys jump into the installation, point out what I was talking about the oil filling location. So here on our 17, you can see we have the old style crankcase, which does have this rear / side mounted filling location / dipstick. On some of the newer models that we have found, that filler location is actually right here. So again, going to interfere with our bracket, as you can see. So we've gone ahead, we're already actually in the development phase of designing a bracket that is actually going to dodge that. That will be pushed forward to all of the newer Groms. It will be a drop-down menu for the first little while, and then eventually actually just be the standard. So we can now jump into the installation since we do have the old style and this is confirmed to fit. We're gonna have an 8mm socket. We're gonna take these two crankcase bolts out. Set that off to the side. Take the bracket off. Set that off to the side as well. Keep that guy captive down there. All right, so with those flange bolts out, we're actually going to have to switch to a 14mm socket. I'm gonna grab a second ratchet with another 14mm socket. You can do this with a wrench and a 14mm possibly as well. Make sure I'm loosening on both. Yep, and then I'm gonna take this engine hanger bolt out. So I'm gonna have to reach over on the other side, locate that. Once we're most of the way loosened, you can probably actually reach over and loosen that nut on the other side by hand. We have the bolt head here, the nut on the other side. There we go, nut's off. Bolt should back out. You may have to tap it with something, perhaps a little mallet. I just actually pressed mine through with my thumb. I have found that it can get stuck in there sometimes if the engine shifts a little bit, but ours came out pretty easily. All right, guys, so to start the reassembly of this side, we're gonna take two of our supplied M6 fasteners with the socket heads. We're gonna take an M6 washer, drop that on top of each. You'll have 5 of those included, 5 of these bolts, you only need 2. Set those down. We're gonna take our long threaded rod, holding the 2 nuts on our lower end, and then we're gonna drop one of our washers down onto that. The next step is going to be to take our right side bracket, throw that rod through the rear mounting hole. Then we're gonna take our 20mm spacer, also throw that down onto the rod. And then we're gonna take that rod and insert that through where our upper engine hanger bolt was. Might take a little bit of wiggling, but it should get there pretty easily. So then we take our 2 M6 socket head fasteners, just get these hand threaded in. We're not gonna be tightening anything down on this side yet because we do wanna mount up some other things to the other side, make sure everything jives, then we'll actually get back to torquing everything down, getting to some torque specs. So with that there, we can take one of our sliders. These are the exact same on right or left. We start to get to see some differences in the spacers. The right side spacer is a little bit longer, so make sure you've grabbed that. The right side hardware, the hex head M10 is actually a little bit longer as well, so make sure you grab that one. So what we're gonna do is throw that M10 down into our slider, into the spacer. We're gonna take the long threaded spacer that's gonna go in the center. We're gonna have to reach around and then thread this bolt into the spacer through our bracket. You could do this one of 2 ways. You could spin the bolt if you have a 17mm hex, or socket rather, or what I'm doing just for right now is actually just spinning that threaded rod onto the bolt, holding the head in place. All right, so with our right side somewhat set up, we're actually gonna move to the left side, remove some bolts from there, throw our left side bracket on, and then we're gonna come back to everything, torque it all down, and the installation is gonna be complete. All right, guys, so now that we are over here on the left side of the motorcycle, we're gonna have to switch back out to our M8 socket. We're gonna be taking 1, 2, 3 of these bolts off. Again, we're gonna remove this little clip, set it off to the side. We won't actually be reusing that. All right, so with our OEM fasteners out, we could grab our 3 remaining M6 fasteners. We're gonna take our 3 remaining washers, dropping 1 down on each. We're gonna wanna locate our longer spacer of the M10 orientation. And we're going to want to throw that over our rod. Mine's been pushed back a little bit, so I'm gonna, there we go, get that to extend fully through. So we're gonna have that 55-ish millimeter spacer on this side. We're going to then take our left side bracket, our 3 fasteners, our 3 M6 fasteners with their washers, drop those down on, hold them with your hands, flip over, take 1 of each of the 10 millimeter spacers. There we go. Then we're going to take this and very carefully line up these screws, bolts with their hole locations. Slip our bracket on, get a couple threads turned by hand. We could go ahead and move to a tool. Again, don't bottom out just yet. We have 1 more step before we can actually start to really button this up. At this point, you want to take your larger flat washer, the remaining 1, locate that onto this threaded rod, and then go ahead and hand thread on your nylock nut. You're not going to be able to get any turns on that. You'll hit the nylock component pretty quickly. Our next step is going to be to take the left side remaining Delrin slider, the shorter left side spacer, and the shorter of the 2 supplied M10 bolts. We're going to take that, making sure the sleeve is down inside of our spacer. Pull that out just to show you guys. It might have fallen out in the box. Make sure that this is down in the spacer with the flange facing outward towards the head of the bolt. We're going to drop that guy back down in. And we're going to take our fastener, drop that down through. We're at this point going to take a 17 millimeter socket, throw that into our spacer. Locate this center rod. You can see the other side is still very loose, so we have a lot of play here. So we're going to want to center that to our left side bracket and just start to get a few turns of that M10 fastener to start to really bring this kit together. Kind of hold it with your finger, making sure the other side isn't spinning. Start to tighten up a little bit, reduce some of this slop so that we can really crank down and get the proper torque specs on all of these components. All right, so there we have it, guys. Pretty sturdy so far. What we're going to do next is we're going to take 2 17 millimeter sockets. We're going to crank this bolt down against the opposite side. You want to make sure that this is threading onto the rod as opposed to the other one threading off and this just staying stationary. That is why we have that second nut on the other side, so that we're not backing out of one nylock component while threading one on. So we're going to go ahead and grab our 2 ratchets, making sure we're tightening on both. Again, if you don't have 2 ratchets handy, you could go ahead and use an open-ended wrench, possibly a closed wrench. You could use a plier if you're really in dire need. You should probably use the proper size tool, but if you are, again, in dire need, you could probably use pliers on one side and a socket on the other. So holding the other side stationary, just going to start to turn this in. Now at this point, we can actually go to bottom out. So go until you feel no slop in that system. While we're on this left side, go ahead and take our M5, tighten these guys down as well, bottom them out. We'll come back through and do torque settings on all of these fasteners. We're going to take that 17 again, give a little crank. You don't have to go too tight. You already bottomed that out. Just give it a little bit of extra. We're going to go to the other side, do the same thing. So bottom out these 2 fasteners on the other side, bottom out the actual spacer component as well. And then we're going to come back through, stay on this side really quick. We'll just actually torque everything down. I'll give you guys the torque specs as I go through the bolts. And the last step is just to go ahead and throw one of these little womet-tech caps into the slider. Then we'll have an installation complete. All right, so our final steps in this procedure are going to be to torque things down. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 torque wrenches at my disposal. This one is one that is going to go much lower than this one. This one has a cutoff of, I believe, it's down at 20 foot-pounds. So for these crankcase bolts, we're actually going to need to go down to 9 foot-pounds or 12 Newton meters, which is what we're going to pull this guy out. We want to start though with our engine hanger bolt. So we're going to go to 40 foot-pounds on our torque wrench, approximately 55 Newton meters. We're going to hold the other side steady with another 17 millimeter socket, and we're going to torque down on this nut until we reach that 40 foot-pound mark. There we go. So just for safe measure, I'm actually going to swap those sides now using the torque wrench on the right side. All right, and there we have it. So we can now actually, at this point, keep our 17s on. I'm going to throw an extension on. We can do. All right, so with our torque wrench still in our hand, we could throw an extension on, keep our 17 millimeter socket. We're going to drop our torque down to 35 foot-pounds. So right around, where are we at? Right around there. We're going to again take our 17 millimeter socket, throw it on the other puck. We're going to start with our left side first. We have a pretty long reach, so this is pretty helpful. If you guys do need to, grab a friend. They might want to hold the other side for you. So there we go, 35 on that side. Again, swap the socket and the torque wrench. 35 on that side. At this point, we can set our 17 millimeter sockets down. We will no longer need those. We can actually switch at this point to our smaller torque wrench. We're going to tighten down our crankcase bolts on either side to 9 foot-pounds or 12 Newton meters. So at this point, we're actually going to take our 5 millimeter Allen head attachment. There we go. 1, 2. All right, so and with our third one torqued on this side, we can move to the other side. Don't have to show you guys that. It's just going to be the 2 fasteners that you saw me almost bottom out on the other side beforehand. Tighten those guys down to 9 foot-pounds or 12 Newton meters. And then all we have left to do is throw our caps in either side. And then the installation is complete. All right, guys, so with all of our fasteners now torqued down back to the OEM specs and the specs that we've given you for our frame sliders themselves, this bike is ready to ride, race, or stunt. Whatever it may be, this little Grom is ready to go. If you guys want to pick up these parts on our website, visit us at tstindustries.com. If you want to see more videos like this, definitely subscribe to our channel. Give this video a thumbs up so we know we're doing something right. And just check out the rest of our content or the rest of our products. We've got a lot of good stuff going on, guys, and a lot of stuff in the works, as always. I'll catch you guys next time. This has been Brian.